Hello, and welcome to this session on wrangling Google Classroom. Today we're going to be covering how to effectively communicate assignments to your students so that they understand what to do and minimize their stress. And so my name is Julie Stanford, and you may be wondering why I am putting this together today. To give you a sense of my background, who I am, I'm a parent of a middle schooler at Graham. And I've been watching him engage with Google Classroom all year, in particular since distance learning began, and had some observations about some things that were and were not working for him. And my background is I'm a user experience designer who, for the last 20 years, been running an agency called Slice Red Design, where we design technology and digital experiences and information to make it easier for people to use and understand. And I'm also a human-computer interaction lecturer at Stanford in the computer science department. And I'm also a science and engineering education fellow, which means that I basically engage in groups and take special courses on improving the way that we teach students at the college level. But honestly, I'm really seeing a lot of the same issues and concerns that my college students are having with my middle schooler in terms of trying to understand what's due and how it's organized and what's expected of them. So with that, let's get into it. As I said, what I'm going to be covering today is information about how to organize Classroom. And I wanted to share to start what informed these recommendations. There's three things. One is observation. I reviewed current formats that teachers are using in Google Classroom to understand kind of what the needs and requirements were for the different types of content that teachers are sharing. I didn't look at every single teacher's. So it may be that your case isn't covered here, and feel free to reach out if it's not. I also interviewed some students about their experience to understand what was and wasn't working for them. And I showed students some of the new ideas that I'm going to be sharing in this document to get their feedback and use that to refine it. And then I also did research. I read articles on Google Classroom about best practices that various teachers have posted, and I checked with the Stanford Center for Teaching and Learning around what best practices they recommend. And so all of that is what's informing the next set of slides. So we're going to cover recommendations in 6 key areas. The first area is around just organizing classwork, particularly that classwork section. Then we're going to talk about assignment names, the schedule document in particular, assignment packages, naming documents, and the stream. So let's dig in. The first area is the biggest topic, which is how should classwork be organized? And I just wanted to start by sharing with you examples of 6 different classwork pages for one student. You can see there's a lot of variation here. Each one is different. Some are organized by week. Some are organized by, hey, here's stuff we're doing for distance learning versus something else. Some are organized by project. Some are organized by topics. Some have some without an organization, and then kind of similar to this by category. Some have a mix of overall ongoing things and then weekly things. So it's really all over the place, and you can see why it might be challenging for a student in middle school, or really any student, to wrap their head around what's due for them, because while each of these may be effective on their own, when presented together for one person to track and manage, it's really hard to do that kind of switching mentally to figure out, okay, how is this teacher presenting the information, what's expected of me? And so I would posit that our goal here is to create something that not only is an effective way for you to showcase your own requirements, but something that may play well with others, because other people may have different formats, and you want to make it as easy and simple for students as possible to understand what's happening for your class, so that it doesn't take them very long to get up to speed. Okay, so let me present the best practice for particularly organization for sudden distance learning. Now, if we were distance learning from the start of the year, you honestly have more options, but because we're midstream, here's what I recommend. You should organize your Google Classwork area by week using topics, right? So they have that create topic, and you're going to make each topic be one specific week. Why is that? Students were used to being in class and sort of having a mental model of every day I come in and something different happens, and I kind of do my work for that day and get homework for that day. And so it's easiest for them to stick with that mental model now that they're at home, to figure out what's really expected of me today and what have I finished. They don't want to go through a lot of explanation. And so the simplest explanation you can offer these students, I'm going to post things for you to do each week, and I'm going to tell you what day you're supposed to do them. And if you don't do them that day, you can do them the next day, but just know you're falling behind. So this example on the left organizes a week by using topics. And then within that week, it's organized by day. If a day isn't possible, you can organize by project within a week. I'll show you an example of that in a minute. And so what's going to happen is on Google Classroom, you're going to have one week at the top, the current week, that's then followed by previous weeks. Topics can actually be dragged and dropped in Classroom to reorder them. So if you add a new topic, it's added at the bottom, you can just drag it up to the top. But again, the goal to always keep in mind here is you want to make it ridiculously easy for students to know what to do and what they finished. And you want that explanation to be as simple as possible. So in this case, our explanation to students is going to be, go to Google Classwork, look at the first section. It's going to be this week. You're going to see exactly what you need to do each day. Done, right? That's all the explanation we want to have. We don't want to have them going around to all kinds of different places and potentially getting lost, especially keeping in mind that they have lots of classes that they're visiting. Now let's look at a more complex example of how to organize the classwork area with 1 week. So in this example, for our fictitious Defense Against Dark Arts class, we have the schedule at the top, which should always come first. Then we have ongoing projects. So these students are working on an Unforgivable Curses project that's been going on for a few weeks. It's due at the end of May, and it's going to appear here at the top and will be referred to in the schedule. And every week, we're going to move it and make sure that it is part of this week's work. Then we have an everyday assignment that's cumulative. It aggregates over time. So every day, a student is going to add another warm-up to this here. And we're going to close it off each week so that it has a due date. And so students understand that it needs to be done by the end of the week. And that appears here at the top as well. Then we have each of the assignments related to the day that the student is supposed to be working on them. So here's an assignment that a student should work on Monday/Tuesday about making potions. Tuesday, there's an ed puzzle. Wednesday, Thursday, they're going to start working on Expelliarmus, and so on and so forth. So you can see some days have multiple items, some days have just one. Now, one thing that's missing here is general instructions about classwork, and that can actually appear at the top of classwork in their own section. I'll give you an example of that in a minute. The other thing I want to mention is that you can see each of these have due dates. What's nice about having due dates is that then when people go to the classroom homepage that shows all of the classes that a student is in, it shows within the box for the class that they have stuff outstanding, which helps them answer the question, do I have anything left to do in this class this week or from previous weeks that I haven't finished? So things that are overdue. And then as they go through this, they'll turn stuff in or mark as done. And then eventually their goal is to have all of these be grayed out for the week as finished, unless it's something that's ongoing, which is a really nice feeling of accomplishment for a student. So I glossed over this idea of where we're putting general instructions. So what we recommend is to put classroom information or general information about classroom stuff at the top of classwork. You don't want to have a lot of things there, maybe just one or two, but something that's always there at the top, then followed by this week's schoolwork. Don't put assignments in this top section, like don't put the ongoing ones or the everyday ones. You might be tempted to do that. You really want to keep all the stuff that the student is supposed to do this week in one topic area so that they can think about it conceptually as, oh, these are all my to-dos for this week, and don't need to go looking around for it in all kinds of different areas. Now, again, if you've been teaching this class all year, you might have trained students about other organizational schemes, but given that we're kind of switching into it midstream, it's best to just keep it really simple. All right, let's move on to assignment naming. You probably saw that I had some interesting naming things going on there, so let's dig into what's going on. So the first recommendation is to number assignments. I saw this recommendation all over the internet and it's been confirmed by multiple sources who use it, that it's really handy if you start including an assignment number, even if sometimes it goes out of order for things that are ongoing because was introduced in a previous week. And the reason that it's nice to have is then you can refer to it. You can tell a student, oh, you haven't done number 11 or check out number 10. If they ask you a question, you and students can also search for it. So you can do Control F and look for something like number 11 or number 121 on the page. There's a hashtag number sign in front of them to facilitate searching. So that if you searched for just 8, it would come up with 8, 18, 81, versus if you search for hashtag 8, it'll just bring up 8, maybe 80. The other way to do that is you can instead put numbers with 3 digits like 001, 006, 003. Or if you just feel like it's messy and there's not going to be that many assignments left for the school year, feel free to leave it out. It's up to you. The other thing you can see here is we're actually including the day that the student should be working on it in the name, which again helps them conceptualize what's going on here. What do I need to pay attention to now versus what do I need to pay attention to later? I'm trying a scheme here of using emoji to communicate the type of assignment. Some teachers are using that really effectively to say, hey, here's a schedule, here's an assignment package, we'll talk about that in a minute, of a whole bunch of stuff that's a little project that we're doing around potion recipes, versus this is just a one-off daily warm-up. This is going to be just a link to Newsela. You can use whatever icons or emojis you want if you decide to go that route. Just tell students what the scheme is. Again, in that top information area or the first day that you introduce it, you can refer to it in the schedule. And it's something that may be useful to some students so that they wrap their head around what this is. The other thing you can notice is I'm using pretty simple names. Things tend to get cut off, like you can see Expelliarmus was too long and got cut off. So you could also try, if your names are really long, to have it's just say WED/THU or TUE instead of Tuesday to keep things a little bit simpler. But in this example, I spelled it out. Okay, now let's talk about schedule documents. So I saw a lot of variation in how teachers were communicating what the weekly schedule and expectations were to students in a single document. I saw some people communicating in a Google Doc. Some people were having Google Slides that communicated either one schedule or Google Slides that communicated multiple schedules across multiple weeks that were cumulative, that built over time. A lot of different variations there. And I'm going to suggest today one variation that you might consider and explain why I'm recommending this particular one. So the first thing I want to say is it's pretty important to match the schedule and the classwork page. So we just talked about the classwork page, and students are really looking for a one-to-one relationship between whatever is happening in this week and what's happening here. And so you can see what's going on. We have the schedule, that's the document we're looking at here. And then there's ongoing unforgivable curses, which we're asking the student to do on Monday, and maybe it's something that's going to continue on for the week, depending on how difficult this assignment is. Every day there's number 7, there's a daily warm-up. On Monday, there's the potion recipe. On Tuesday, there's the Ed puzzle. The potion recipe continues on to Tuesday. So you can see it has this nice relationship and it's using the same language, and all of the same content is represented here. Some of these things have some additional information around expected time that I saw some teachers doing. That's fine. You just don't want to have this be too cluttered. You can actually put whatever information you have about that assignment into the explanation of that assignment. So let's talk about this overall document. The biggest piece of advice I have about this document is to keep it simple and clean. So on the previous screen, we saw a version that was all just one font, but I know people want to like have fun with it, and that's fine, but we really want to try to limit a lot of extra fonts and images. Extra visuals can tend to be overwhelming for some students, especially if there's a lot of different fonts. If you want color, it's fine. Try to color code days. That's kind of a nice way, because then you're using color for a reason, not just for fun, and try to have the colors be a little bit muted so it's not, screaming at you. If you want to use a font, that's fine, but please try to use just one fun font. So I'm using this kind of Defense Against Dark Arts font here for Mr. Lupin, and just for the schedules, but don't put any important information in a fun font. Try to really have it be in a serious font that is legible and easy for students to scan. Preferably don't use Comic Sans. My design side is showing through. There's a long history of antipathy toward Comic Sans, and some students kind of have a lot of memes around using Comic Sans, so I would stay away from that. Overall, just try to keep it as easy to read as possible. So here I have just one image. Like, just don't overload this document. This is a really working document. It's a workhorse here, and you just don't want to have a lot of extra things here. The other thing is you really want to keep this material fresh. This is not the place to put all the information that you want students to know about your class in general. The place for that is that classroom information area we discussed earlier. If you put that information in here, then they're going to stop reading the whole document because they won't know what's fresh. So try to keep all the content here, like here's this week's message to students that hopefully is going to change every week, and so students are like primed to keep reading it. Otherwise, if there's some information here that never changes, and then some information that's new, then they're not going to read the new information because they're going to think that oh, there's nothing new here. I'm just not going to not even look at it. I included one line of just the most important thing that I thought students might want to know. Maybe office hours are really important. Maybe you just really want to make sure people understand that Zoom is happening. But you can see it's just one line, like this whole top part. And then once you get into the body, it's always going to be fresh. And I've provided a link here to this document if you want to look at an example of it or use it as a starting point. Okay, and then my last point about this document is I think it's pretty important to make it be one page and not part of a larger cumulative thread of all the schedules that have happened. Students just want to click on the schedule and get into it without scrolling to find it. And they just want it to be its own schedule that lives with assignments for the week, not a cumulative document of all the schedules that they can revisit and think about what happened in the past. If they want to, they haven't done that work yet, they can go scroll to that week in classwork and see the schedule for that week so that it's all grouped together. This can be done in Google Docs or Google Slides. If you want to have another slide that goes along with the schedule, like supporting slides, that's fine. Just make sure if this is part of a larger Google Slides doc, that this is the first slide, and then other slides in that document are for this week only. So you don't need a cover page. You don't need anything like that. This isn't a slideshow. You just want to have, this is your starting point, and then the subsequent information. And don't, if you have this as part of a slide deck, don't put other general information in that weekly schedule slide deck, because again, people are just going to skip it over, and then they won't know what's the fresh part to look at. Okay, the next area to discuss is assignment packages. So we've talked about the overall organization at a high level. Now let's talk about organizing one particular assignment. So sometimes you might have an assignment that has a bunch of different pieces in it that all come together, like this assignment around potion recipes. And if you put content here, students may engage with that content in any order that they've decided is the most interesting to them, because maybe they just want to start with a video, but really you're thinking, I don't want you to start with the video. It's really important to start with the potion recipe instructions. So it's kind of hard to communicate to students about that. There's not a super strong recommendation. The thing I've seen works best is to say very clearly, do the attachments in this order, and then give the order. The potion recipe instructions, potions for beginners, which is the YouTube video, and notice how I'm starting off with the name of it, not just YouTube video, because that's the thing that appears the largest. And then your recipe, which is where they're going to submit their own document. This particular student has the name Sliced Bread. It's a long story why, but I'm giving a sense here of the order. If you wanted to call this Start Here or Read Me First, that might help also for students that aren't going to read this, to ground people in what you should do first versus last. If you just number this 1, that's not going to help as much because this is a YouTube video, and so it's just going to pull whatever the name is for the YouTube video, so you can't really rename it. This is kind of the only recourse you have for communicating what students should do here in what order. You should also try to add the the attachments in the order that you'd like them done, which we attempted to do in this case. And I think we discussed it already, but I'm just going to reiterate. It's really nice to provide a due date so that it can show in the classroom overview. Okay, document naming. So it turns out that when you look at these document packages, these assignment packages, that they really cut off names. And so sometimes you see something like this. I saw this a lot in some of the document packages that I looked at. The names are really getting cut off. Like here's one that has 4 different items, and they're all called Patronus Quest because it's Patronus Quest instructions and slideshow and resources in your work. And so everything's being cut off, and there's no way for a student to know what they're supposed to do first. They'd have to be actually psychic. So the best practice here is start the document with different words so they all appear unique. So you can see I just rearranged it. This one's now instructions, Patronus Quest. This is now resources. This is slides. And this is the student sliced bread, and then your Patronus. So this is kind of how it appears in the student view. Just be mindful of what's going to happen, and don't name your things all at once like this, because it's just going to be too confusing for students to know what to do. Also keep in mind that when it's a document that the student, that Classroom makes for each student, that they fill in, that it's going to put their name first, and then that's going to cause this to be even more cut off. So you just need to be really mindful of that some students may not see it at all if they have a really long name. Okay, last topic, customizing the stream. Don't let this happen to you. Some streams are just a messy stream. It's just a hot mess. Like I look through them, there's just so much going on. Every time you edit something, it like pops up another notification, and it's just like a mess that students struggle with because there's some gems buried within, but they can't find them. So there's a pretty simple solution, which is customizing your stream. You can turn off all the notifications on the stream except the ones that you post. And I'll show you how to do that on the next slide. But here's the recommendation of what you want. You only want to post what you want on the stream so it doesn't become this hot mess of notifications. Direct students for their weekly work to your beautifully organized classroom area. Say, hey, go to classwork, find all your stuff there. It's going to be organized by week. The schedule's going to be at the top. You're set. No more conversation. Only post things here that you're okay with having scroll off and get lost later. For example, you could put an announcement that the weekly schedule is posted just so it's here, but it might scroll off, but you don't care because people have been directed to go to classwork. So it's just kind of like a little reminder. You might post some kudos like, hey, great job on this, or did you know some students are doing that, or like kind of, you know, the way that people use a feed in social media to like communicate in a social way to a class, the way that you might be have done in class before, but now you're unable to do any longer. So, you know, kudos, Harry Potter, Hermione, Ron, successfully defeating a boggart. Spells will come in handy later. Or you might give a reminder about Zoom or something that's coming up, but you don't want this to be the primary source of information because things are going to scroll off, and you don't know, you know, if something that you post now is just going to move something down and a student then isn't able to find it. So have classwork remain as the primary source and turn off notifications so that this doesn't become a messy source of stress. So how do you do that? In the upper right-hand corner of Classroom, there's a gear. Click on that. Scroll down to Classwork on the stream. Click on the drop-down for Classwork on the stream and choose Hide Notifications. And then it'll only show the notifications and the things that you want posted there that you add in the stream area yourself. So it'll only show your the posts that you create. That's all the topics I wanted to cover in today's webinar. Let's go over the key points. The first point is the overarching organization principle of this whole scheme, which is organizing classwork by week, so that students understand what's expected of them each week, what they have to do each day, and because this is something that was sprung on them, they can have a mental model of like, hey, how do I organize my time effectively for each of the 8 classes that I'm responsible for? And so you can use topics and classwork in that area to organize your content by week, and then within that by day or by project, and direct students to always look there to figure out what's happening for the current week. Number 2, we talked about naming and numbering of assignments. In particular, we talked about within that organization of numbering each assignment. You can refer to it by number and can also search and cross-reference with PowerSchool, which is really great. You're going to include whether it's ongoing or daily or what day it's associated with. And then if you want, you can add some emoji for visual distinction. Point number 3 is putting the schedule as its own document. There's lots of ways that people are doing scheduling. I recommend having it be its own standalone thing. If there's other related pages, have them come after the schedule, have the schedule be the first thing that appears when you click on it, and have that be a really easy, clean document that doesn't have a lot of extraneous visual things and is really keeping it fresh. 4th point is around assignment packages. If there's documents that are related to each other, put information about each assignment in one package that contains the order of use in the instructions so that students know what order to engage with the things that are in that package. The next point is within the package, when there's documents, use informative, simple naming, in particular, so that each starts with something descriptive, and then the important info isn't cut off. When all of the documents start with the name of the package that they're part of, then students don't know which document it is. And then the last point is around customizing your stream. Stream can become a hot mess really quickly, so just change it so it only shows the posts that you make, not constant notification. That's all I got, you guys. Thanks for attending.